What if I told you that the very thing that makes you feel like an outsider, the overthinking, the constant analysis, the sense you don't quite fit in is actually the signature of a rare form of intelligence? I know that sounds completely backward, because for most of your life, people have probably told you the opposite, that you think too much, that you're too sensitive, that you need to just relax. But stick with me, because the research tells a very different story. And by the end of this video, you're going to see those so-called weaknesses in a completely different light. Let's start with something that probably happened to you recently. You walked into a room, a meeting, a party, a family gathering, and within seconds you knew something was off. No one had said anything. Nothing obvious had happened. But your brain had already scanned the faces, the tone, the tension sitting in the silence. Most people call this anxiety. They tell you you're overthinking it. But what if I told you that what you were doing in that moment is actually what cognitive psychologists call thin slicing, the ability to extract meaning from the smallest fragments of information? Here's the thing. People with rare intelligence don't just process more information. They process different information. Information that most people's brains filter out as noise. And this creates a fundamental disconnect. Because when you perceive things others can't see, you will always feel a little out of step with the people around you. Researchers have been studying this phenomenon for decades, and what they found challenges almost everything we're told about intelligence. Most of us grow up believing intelligence is about how fast you solve math problems or how many facts you can recall. That's what IQ tests measure. But over the last 20 years, psychologists have identified something they call cognitive complexity, which has very little to do with traditional intelligence measures. A study published in the Journal of Personality found that people who score high on cognitive complexity don't just think more. They think in more dimensions simultaneously. They hold contradictory ideas. They see patterns where others see randomness. And here's where it gets really interesting. This kind of intelligence doesn't always translate into academic success. It shows up as overthinking, emotional depth, and a constant sense that you're seeing something others are missing. Now, I want to pause here because this is where most people check out. We've been told our whole lives that overthinking is a problem to solve. But what if it's actually evidence of something else entirely? Let's go through 7 specific traits. Trait 1. You absorb a room before a single word is spoken. The moment you step through a door, something in your brain activates. You clock the body language, the tension sitting between two people, the voice that sounds cheerful but has something tight underneath it. This is not intuition in the mystical sense. Developmental psychologists have documented that people who grow up paying close attention to their environment develop an unusually heightened sensitivity to nonverbal cues. Their brains learned early to read what the words are not saying. And here's the thing most people miss. This ability is computationally expensive. Your brain is doing in seconds what would take a supercomputer minutes. That mental exhaustion you feel after social situations? It's not social anxiety. It's your brain running a level of processing most people's brains never attempt. Trait 2. You feel other people's emotions before they've named them themselves. Someone tells you they're fine and you already know they're not. You catch the shift in energy, the slight change in their breathing, the way their eyes moved for a quarter of a second. Psychologists refer to this as hyperempathy. And here's what the research actually shows. This is not the same as being emotional. It's a form of advanced pattern recognition. Your brain has built such a sophisticated model of human emotional expression that it detects disruptions in that model before the person experiencing the emotion has even formed the words. You were not born an empath in some mystical sense. You were trained into one by a brain that refused to stop paying attention. Trait 3. You can detect inauthenticity almost instantly. When someone is performing, masking, or quietly manipulating a situation, something in you flags it before your conscious mind can fully articulate why. This is your brain's pattern matching system at work. You've cataloged thousands of authentic interactions, and when an inauthentic one appears, the deviation registers immediately. The gap between what someone says and how they're holding their body. The micro-expression that contradicts the words. This makes you very difficult to gaslight. You trust your own perception with a fierceness that can surprise people who have never had to fight to hold on to their own version of events. Trait 4. Your mind never actually stops. While other people can set a problem down and walk away from it, Your brain keeps working. In the shower, at 2 a.m., during conversations you're supposed to be paying attention to. This principle shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. The same cognitive machinery that produces overthinking is also what produces breakthrough insights. It's not two separate processes. It's the same engine, and whether it produces anxiety or genius depends almost entirely on what you point it at. Researchers call this the default mode network, a brain system that activates when you're not focused on an external task. In most people, it's relatively quiet. In people with rare intelligence, it runs hot, constantly connecting, constantly pattern matching, constantly running simulations of things that haven't happened yet. This is exhausting. But it's also the reason you see solutions that come at problems sideways while everyone else is still trying to figure out the conventional approach. Trait 5. You solve problems sideways. The conventional path, the logical sequence, the rule-following approach, these feel limiting to you. Your brain learned to find the effective solution rather than the correct one. This is what psychologists call divergent thinking, and it's consistently linked to high creative intelligence. You discovered backdoors and workarounds and unconventional angles in situations where the expected route was closed off. That adaptive problem-solving becomes a cognitive superpower that people around you struggle to replicate because it was never taught, it was earned. Trait 6. Trust arrives slowly, but when it does, it's built differently. Your threshold for trusting people is higher than average, and that is not cynicism. Cognitive psychologists call this adaptive skepticism. Your brain learned early that signals of safety are not always genuine and built its filters accordingly. Those filters have cost you in loneliness, in connections that never fully formed. But here's the part nobody tells you. The relationships that do pass through them tend to be among the most honest and durable that either person has ever experienced. Because you don't trust easily, your trust actually means something. But here's where most people get stuck. Recognizing these traits is one thing. Actually integrating them, that's the work that needs to be done. So here's what I want you to do. Take the next 60 seconds, right now, and identify which of these 6 traits you've been treating as a weakness. Maybe it's the overthinking you've been trying to shut off. Maybe it's the hyper-empathy that exhausts you. Maybe it's the skepticism that's kept you isolated. Now ask yourself this. What if that trait is not evidence that something is wrong with you, but evidence that your mind developed a capability most people never needed to develop? This is the ironic art of owning your intelligence. The very thing you've been trying to fix might be the thing that makes you extraordinary. Trait 7. You carry a hunger for meaning that shallow things cannot touch. And this brings us to the 7th trait, the one that ties everything together. You do not move through life on the surface. You have looked at pain directly, your own and other people's, and something in you has refused to let it be pointless. Psychologists Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun have studied this phenomenon extensively under the framework of post-traumatic growth. They documented how a significant number of people who navigate real adversity emerge with a deeper and more grounded sense of what matters and why. Not as an intellectual conclusion, but as something forged through lived experience. Here's what ties all 7 together. These are not weaknesses that have been repackaged to sound better. They are genuine neurological and psychological adaptations. They are the architecture of a mind that grew in directions most people never needed to go. The sharpness is real, the depth is real, and so was the cost. For a long time, the very things that made you perceptive and deep and resilient were probably the same things that made you feel like something was fundamentally wrong with you. There was never anything wrong with you. You were developing capabilities that most people will never fully understand. The question from here is not what's wrong with you. The question is what you decide to do with the extraordinary mind that you have. If this landed for you, subscribe and share with someone who needs to hear it.